Adults with abandonment wounds will continue to self-abandon themselves in order to keep the relationship going, even when it is detrimental to their emotional well-being and not getting their needs met. This unhealthy dynamic further reinforces their internal belief system of not feeling good enough and not being worthy of love. And unfortunately, this unhealthy, heartbreaking pattern will not change until the individual chooses to walk down the healing path to heal their relational and attachment wounds and break the patterns for good. If you have had a childhood defined by emotional neglect or physical neglect, rage, inconsistency, unpredictability from your parents or caregivers, then you most likely as a child grow up believing that it must be your fault or you must not be good enough to have not had your emotional needs met. In today's video, we are going to look at how you can heal your abandonment wounds in 6 steps that I have applied on myself, and this has helped me to come a long way in healing my abandonment wounds, and I hope that this would also help for those of you who are currently committed to your healing journey. My name is Veena Raji and welcome back to my channel. This channel is dedicated to talking about childhood trauma, narcissistic abuse, and healing attachment styles, something that I had done on myself over the last couple of years without any professional help. And I dedicate this channel to anyone who is currently on their healing journey, hoping that this information would help you as much as it helped me. Early attachment formed with your caregivers or parents can either shape you to thrive in this grand world, or you can grow up with severe attachment or relational trauma due to emotional abandonment that you experienced. Abandonment wounds can cut deep in your ability to form healthy, loving connection, especially around your romantic connections, because we tend to relive our childhood with our partners, and the wrong partner can bring us back to that state of helplessness we once experienced as a child, recreating and exacerbating our core wound as painful as it already is. The first step that you can take to deal with your abandonment wounds is to confront and deal with the shame and guilt that you carry. Now, shame is often a negative view of the self which is developed during early adulthood, as we feel like we don't belong or we don't fit in or we are not good enough. There's this strong inner critic about everything we do because we are so afraid of how we will be perceived by others. So we have this preoccupied thoughts of how we would be seen, how we would be received if we would do something, if we would make a mistake, and how that would make us look like. And this toxic shame is again deeply rooted in the way our caregivers responded to our emotional needs when we were younger, and the lack of validation and acknowledgement further reinforces the reason why we feel not good enough or that we could have done better. Any slightest criticism or feedback can often be seen as a personal attack to our character, and this can trigger some of our very painful core wounding. So you need to really start working through healing your shame, toxic shame and guilt. And if you want to know how you can work through this, I do have a separate video on how you can deal with toxic shame. I have worked through mine, and I would say that that's been one of the most life-changing experience since I have been able to deal with toxic shame and guilt. We have is to deal with compulsive perfectionism. Now, as a child, when you have experienced severe neglect and abandonment, you tend to adopt this compulsive perfectionism mindset. Your brain is wired to think that you will only be accepted if you were perfect, or you will be seen as less if you don't perform. And your entire self-identity and acceptance is often measured by how well you can contribute to something or to someone. So this can also look like compulsive needing to dress a certain way or want to look a certain way to be liked, or you need to do well in your career, you need to perform, you need to be a top performer in your class, you need to get good grades so that your parents will be proud of you, or you need to perform well in your job so that you will be liked by your peers and your managers. So you tend to have this endless list of perfectionism, and this can be an exhausting endeavor for anyone to carry with, because the fact is none of us can be perfect. The problem is, for those of us who develop compulsive perfectionism, it doesn't just end with your good grades. It doesn't stop with your career. You strive for perfectionism in every other area of your life. You feel like you need to be a certain way to be accepted by your friends. You need to be a certain way to be in a romantic relationship. You need to have a certain persona to be accepted by your romantic partner. And if you fail to do any of those, if you're not perfect enough, someone is going to reject you or abandon you, or they are going to perceive that you're not good enough, and the list goes on and on and on. And the fact is that this is simply exhausting, because you will never be able to find perfectionism in everything that you do. Life is really all about duality. We are going to have good days, we are not going to have some great days, we are going to have some really great achievements and great days. But the fact is, you cannot be perfect every single day. You are a full functioning human being, and you're allowed to have bad days, you're allowed to have flaws, you're allowed to have mistakes. But unfortunately, for a lot of people who suffer with this core wounding and trauma, they just feel like the moment they are not perfect, they just instantly feel that the inner voice is a strong critic that sends a message to the brain that they are failing, and thus they are not going to be well received or accepted or loved for that reason. And this is really painful, and the only way to rewire this is to really come to terms and accept that failure is part of life, and that you don't need to perform to be liked or to be loved. You only do what makes you feel good, and you need to really approach yourself with compassion. Next we have is excessive self-reliance. Now again, this is something that is debatable, because to a certain extent, once we are an adult, we are truly responsible for ourselves. I mean, not everyone have the means or the support system to always have someone to hold us. For a lot of adults, we have to hold ourselves. We have to go out into the world. We have to do everything that we can do for ourselves, to provide for ourselves, to take care of ourselves. And for some, we might even have responsibility. We might have to look after family or younger siblings. So a lot of them who never quite received the emotional validation, acknowledgement, or feeling of safety, or not have any of their needs met, or maybe they were yelled at, they were pushed away, or they were shamed when they asked for something, when they reached out for help. Now, this individual will grow up to become obsessively self-reliant to an extent that they will not be able to reach out and ask for help. Now, reaching out, asking for support is a secure trait. A secure person will reach out and seek support when they need help. However, for someone who is severely traumatized, and these are very common among people with the avoidant personality traits or tendencies, they struggle asking for help. And it's not because they have not tried. Oftentimes, for a lot of people who develop compulsive self-reliance, they have tried reaching out, asking for help, and unfortunately, they never quite received the help, or when they reached out for help, they were probably shamed or ridiculed, and that further reinforces their internal belief system that no one is going to come around to help them, and that they have to look after themselves. And they can, to a certain extent, develop a very unhealthy self-reliant habits that they would not allow someone to be there for them. And this often can be detrimental in romantic connections, because a romantic relationship is all about connecting, relating, and sharing and being there for each other. And when you do not have that ability to allow another person to show up for you and be there for you, you are not allowing yourself a chance to have the relationship that you always desired, because someone that truly loves you would really want to be there for you. But again, if you would not allow, if you would not make that space, that person will not be able to be there for you. However, I must say that for someone who has been self-reliant all their lives, they need that autonomy and independence. You cannot simply just take that away. However, what I would suggest is to try and find balance, that to be self-reliant is absolutely fine. However, you need to develop this understanding around being able to seek and accept support when you need them in small ways. You can start small. Next we have is dealing with compulsive trust issues. Now this one is extremely difficult. This is likely the most difficult one to work through, and I'll be honest, until today I still do struggle with trusting. I do have severe trust issues. So for those of you who have struggled or suffered severe abandonment wounds, trusting another person can be terrifying. It can be life-threatening, because you just don't have that internal belief that someone is actually going to be there to hold your hands and be there for you during difficult moments, because all you know is that you were abandoned or neglected in your past whenever you needed someone to be there for you. Now, how can you work through this? I would say that you first need to know that it is actually perfectly normal to be able to trust people. You need to remove this wall that you've built around yourself, thinking that people are unsafe. While it can be true for a lot of us who have experienced betrayal trauma, it gets really challenging to be able to open up and trust someone. However, you also need to develop compassion and know that it's perfectly healthy, normal. It's a human's natural instinct to want to trust another person. However, you also need to use discernment. You cannot be too trusting at the same time, but try to remove this negative view on trust. One way to do it is to always tell yourself that yes, I am going to try and put my trust in this person, but also know at the back of your head that not everyone can be trustworthy. And if someone chooses to break your trust, that is not your problem, that is their problem. Being able to trust someone is the first step to being able to build a healthy, secure connection. Now, understand, secure people do not have issues trusting another person. They just don't have this trauma around them that holds them back from thinking that someone is going to betray their trust or someone is going to abandon them. However, it's not the case. If you have suffered abandonment wounds, then trust becomes the most challenging thing to deal with in your adult life. You just simply cannot come to trust anyone. You can't bring yourself to trust people so easily. Now, this one is really incredibly challenging. If you need more information on this, there really are a lot of resources out there that you can, look out for. However, for me personally, this is something that I'm still struggling with, so I do not have a video on this subject just yet. Next we have is really learning self-compassion and learning about your needs. You have to learn to normalize your needs and acknowledge that it's perfectly human to have certain needs. It does not make you needy. It does not make you seem desperate or helpless. You need to learn to be compassionate for having needs, and at the same time, you also need to learn to have healthy boundaries around your needs. Now, for a lot of us who have not had our emotional needs met when we were much younger, we tend to develop this negative view around having needs. So, which is also why we tend to not be able to communicate our needs effectively with someone. When we need something, we do not know how to ask for that, because the times when we did when we were younger, we were pushed away or shamed or ridiculed or dismissed. And when you have had those experiences as a child, when you grow up, you don't have that emotional skills or relational skills to ask for your needs from another person, because you perceive asking your needs from another person as wrong. It almost seems like you have this view about having needs is so wrong. I used to feel guilty about telling someone that what I truly need in a connection. If I desire more connection, if I desire talking to someone, if I desire being in contact more often, I used to struggle to be able to articulate my needs because I felt like I was gonna come across needy. I used to feel like something's wrong with me. Why could I not be like everyone else? Why do I have all these needs? It wasn't until much later when I learned how secure people actually communicate and how secure people get their needs met is when I started to understand that having needs is perfectly healthy and normal, and you need to start having compassion if you have not had your needs met when we're younger. Now, if you were to go to someone and if they are not able to reciprocate, you are going to feel triggered, you are going to feel upset, you're going to feel hurt. But again, know that your needs are not wrong. Your needs are valid. Just because someone cannot meet your needs, that does not make your emotional needs invalid. You just need to know that they might not be the right person for you. So you can find someone that is more aligned for you. And this can be in friendships or romantic connections. Unfortunately, with family, that's not so much of an option. If someone cannot meet your needs, then you just have to do better for yourself by distancing yourself. But in other areas of your relationship, like friendship, colleagues, romantic connections, you have a choice. The last step is to make a checklist of everything that is affecting you. And one way to do this is to start by doing the attachment quiz. You can take the attachment quiz, which actually would reveal all your patterns and your insecure traits and what are the areas that you are going to have to work on. So when you take the attachment quiz here, you get a breakdown of all the things that you feel and react to, and then from there you can extract those pieces of information, write them down, make a note, and then from there you can create a roadmap on how you are going to work on each area. Now again, understand, this is a roadmap for you to heal your abandonment wounds so that you can move towards becoming more secure. This is not a get rich quick scheme, so this can actually take a very long time. And as we all know, we speak of healing is not linear. There are going to be good days, there are going to be some very difficult days, and during your healing process you can always fall back into your old patterns. But that's why you need to make an inventory of all the things that is affecting your life currently, your ability to form healthy relationship, all the parts of you which is hurting you. So when you get access to this information, now you already have a bit of a structure on what are the things that you're going to need to start working on. So you take one step at a time, you take one issue at a time to be worked upon. Now, for example, I used to have deep fear of public speaking. Public speaking is something I have desired as a child. I've always imagined and envisioned myself being out there speaking on a public platform or being on stage and talking to people, but I was not able to do it my entire life. And when I dived deeper, I had so much insecurities around my ability to speak. I used to be terrified of how people were going to see me. What if I would make a fool out of myself when I'm talking? What if I make grammatical errors? What if I were to maybe not look great or presentable on a stage? And what if someone would not be interested in what I've got to talk about? So when I dived deeper, I was able to see where all these insecurities were coming from, because as a child, every time I had an opinion, I was dismissed and invalidated. When I was in my adult life, I was always surrounded by people who were not interested in my opinion. When I tried having an opinion, I was ridiculed or dismissed or shamed. When I was in a work environment, when I tried to voice out an opinion, I would be shut out. So all this further reinforced my belief that I would never be able to get there. And then when I did the attachment quiz, I started realizing all the areas that I needed to work on. Like, for the first thing was that the times when I was invalidated, when I was dismissed, that's not my fault, just because I was surrounded by the wrong people. So I started validating myself. I started educating myself on the things that I'm really good at. I started embracing my strengths. That made me feel more confident within myself. And then I was able to conquer my fear around toxic shame and guilt. I was able to work on my communication skills to appear and sound more confident. So there are a lot of things that you would need to do in order for you to heal your abandonment wounds. Now, for me, healing my abandonment wound led me to feeling more confident within myself, that now I am able to face the camera and talk about it and put myself out there on a public platform. And I no longer have that fear of criticism or the need to be perfect. I do allow myself to make mistakes. Now, there are videos where I've had some grammatical mistakes as well, because some of my contents are not completely scripted. I allow myself to go with the flow, and I started embracing myself that this is a measure of success and a progress for myself. For someone who was not able to face the camera, to now being able to put myself out here and to talk about it is a measure of progress. And I know how much work it's taken for me to be able to get to this point. So give that to yourself. Get to making a checklist about all the things that's affecting you in your life, everything that's probably holding you back. Start understanding what are the things that you would likely need to work on, and then create a roadmap. Thank you so much for watching this video, and please do leave thumbs up and subscribe to this channel to help me grow my channel, and I will see you again in my next video.